Thanks, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. So the title of my presentation today is Unicorn Networks, the Power Law, and the Dominance of Enterprise Tech. Now, that's a lot of jargon, so let me start by giving a little bit of definitions. So a unicorn here is a private company that's valued by at least $1 billion. And a private company opposite to a public company where you can buy the shares on the stock market. And then the power law is the concept that as an investor, sometimes you're looking at one or two companies that are going to make most of the returns, where you might invest in hundreds of companies, but as long as one or two companies become $1 billion or so, you can afford to have all the other companies go to zero. So if you plot that distribution of returns, that's going to look like the power distribution in statistics. So I'm going to go into the data that I've used to show this power law and how enterprise tech dominates, especially in the United States. But before I do that, let me do a little bit of background about me. All right, that's me. So that's me and my dog, Curly, and my wife, Felicia. We live here in Nashville. I've been in Nashville for 8 years. Currently, I work as a data engineer at Sony Music Publishing. And I've included a link to my GitHub and my LinkedIn. A little bit about my education. So I attended Sewanee, the University of the South. You can see my dog with the Sewanee hat. That was homecoming. And after Sewanee, I did a master's in biostatistics from Harvard School of Public Health. And I've done a lot of different things. I used to work at Vanderbilt in health policy research. Then I went into banking at UBS, and now I'm at Sony Music. So I like to jump around a little bit. Project motivation. So one of the things that made me interested in this project was to think about how do you find companies that have enough traction that as job seekers, especially when you hear about layoffs, et cetera, it's not always uniform. There are always some companies that are doing well, even though you might hear layoffs in some sectors. So I wanted to identify companies that have what you call strong product market fit. They are not startups. They've reached $1 billion valuation, so they're typically more mature. So that if I were to look for a job myself, these are the kind of companies that I would be looking at. And then the other idea here was, as a startup founder, I've played with starting companies myself. Some of them, all of them have failed. But if you want to think about how do you identify which investors invest in certain sectors like healthcare, how would you go about that using data? So let me tell you a bit more about the data that I've used. So I use data from CB Insights, which is a company that tracks private companies, mostly in the US, but also all over the world. The data was from September 2014. So when you see the valuations that I'm going to show, keep that in mind that for some of these companies, it changes very quickly. So for example, in September 2014, OpenAI, which is one of the companies that you'll see in here, was valued at $80 billion, but now it's $115 billion. So if you see the totals, there might be a mismatch. And then in terms of the technology I used, I built the first version using Python in a framework called Gradio. And I published the app on Hugging Face, which I won't go into a lot of details about this platform, but I've included a link to the live application on Hugging Face, so you can go and interact with it. But then because of some limitations, I decided to build the JavaScript version using VO, which is a recently released AI coding IDE. you can work with. I don't know any JavaScript, but I was able to build the app in JavaScript, being able to interact with the app as an AI chat interface. So this is a little bit of an overview of the data. So it's a little bit hard to, can you see in the back? So if you can see, the US had most of the aggregate valuation of the total valuation that's tracked in this data set is about $3 trillion. And the US had about 2.2 trillion, followed by China. And then for the US, you can see that enterprise technology had the biggest share of this total valuation, followed by
Leonce.
Yes.
Sorry, we on Zoom we can't see your slide. It's showing you, not the slide.
Uh-oh.
It's showing the slides for me.
Yeah, I see the slides.
I can see the
You can see
slides. I can see the
maybe
slides.
Then it's me. Sorry to interrupt. Apologies.
All right, cool, awesome. And for China, though, it's not the same. For China, actually, you can see that media and entertainment is the most dominant. And this can be explained by the company called ByteDance, which is the parent company of TikTok, which was valued at over $200 billion. So it takes a big chunk of the unicorns that this data set tracks. Let me get into a demo and actually show you the live application. Let's see. Okay. Can you see? Okay, visible. So this application, as I said, it's built in JavaScript. And essentially what I did is I downloaded the data from CB Insights. And then I built, it's a dashboard the same way you would build a dashboard in Power BI or Tableau, but this is fully in JavaScript. And to start, you can see the total market cap tracked is about $4 trillion. There were 1,200 companies that are in this data set with an average valuation of $3 billion, with 1,400 investors. So if you start here, you can see that ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, was the largest company here, followed by SpaceX, and then OpenAI. And you can filter by countries. So if I filter for the United States, you can see that we get $2 trillion with about 600 companies. And what I like to use as part of these features is you can also see who are the biggest investors for these companies. So you can see here that Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the known venture capital firms, has such a 12% of all of the valuation by Andreessen Horowitz. And then you can also see the data as a table. So you can be able to see what are the companies, what industry are they in? So SpaceX obviously would be in industrials. And then you can see that these are the top investors for SpaceX. And there is also a network view, which is more fun. So in blue, you're seeing the investors, and then in green, it's actually the companies themselves. So when you have, for the whole United States, it's kind of a mess. But if you add other filters, so let me say city, I would do Nashville. Then you can only see a few players. So the two companies that are in this data set based in Nashville, there is Build Technologies and CareBridge. Is anyone familiar with any of these companies? Built? Awesome. And then let me see. Oh, one other feature that I like about this app is that you can export what you've filtered. so that let's say you're only interested in that subset of companies, then you can just interact with the output as a CSV file or as an Excel document. So let's say, let me do another demo. Enterprise tech. So San Francisco makes a very large percentage of the valuation that's tracked in this data set, because that's where the biggest like VC technology system is. So if you look at the San Francisco, you can see that of the 2 trillion market cap of the US, about 800 billion is just in San Francisco. And also you can get like all of the views that you would be interested in. So this is really more it's a fun project for me. I've enjoyed playing around with this data set and seeing all the views I can create. It's all public on GitHub. So if anybody is interested in playing around with it, or one of the challenges that I have is how do I keep the data up to date? So that's one of the issues that I've created, where trying to keep it up to date so that it can actually be accurate representation of the data. So that's all I prepared. We'll take any questions, or if anybody has any view that they would like to see, happy to show it. Go ahead.
Can you show like the top 25 cities in the US?
The top 20.
Nashville rate for valuation and for investment?
I don't think I'm configured to filter by like the top 10 cities. What I think the closest I have to that, let me see. No, I can, yeah, no. If I select just the United States, let me do that here. And no, it just shows like the top investors and the top companies, but it's not showing the top cities. So you have to like go and search, but that's something I can quickly add. If that's of interest. Go ahead.
How long from first idea till something to show? How long did it take you?
I know some on Zoom may not be able to hear the question, so if
Okay.
you can kind of repeat the question, might be helpful.
So the question is, how long from first idea to something that I can show? So the first Python version was very quick, because that's the language I use for work. So I built I didn't show it here, but I can open it. That took probably a couple hours. But to be able to do this one in JavaScript, I just had to do like try and error, ask questions, get bugs, feed it back into the AI and ask questions. Probably took me a couple weekends, but it's also like something I'm doing for fun. It's not like a work project. Yeah.
Why did you have to switch from Python? What problems did you encounter that made you want to switch to JavaScript?
So it was primarily the network visualization. I was having a hard time using the NetworkX library in Python. And the visualization I was creating in like the network view, because initially I was really more interested in like, if you start with an investor, let's say Andreessen Horowitz, and you see all the companies they invest in, you can think about it like from like a job search perspective, like going through that network of like, they invested in this company, but they also co-invested with this other investor. So I can go to these other investors' portfolio companies and be able to see like what other companies they've invested in that are hiring. But that network view, when I was creating it in Python, I didn't really like how it looked. So it's more like a personal preference. Yeah.
Just a couple more questions. Maybe if you have.
Okay, I have a question about the tool that you use to build it in JavaScript. So I've been using JavaScript and I've been building sites, and my sites still look terrible, and yours look really amazing. Could you actually like press that light to dark button over there?
Oh, which one?
Dark. It looks amazing. Anyway, so could you like talk more about the AI tool and how you work with it? Because like you said that you never used JavaScript before.
Yeah.
How did you manage to like create that?
Again, a little bit about the question.
Yes, yes. So the question was, he has experience with JavaScript, but his sites are horrible.
Again, just repeating.
Yeah, not me. And so this is actually one of the nice. So Vercel, they created the Node. One of the creators of one of the I think it Node, Next.js or whatever it is. See, I don't even know the difference, right? But the VO app that they've built is really powerful because they, in addition to it connecting to the OpenAI models in the backend, they fine-tune the models to know all of the JavaScript documentation. So as long as you know, you can go back and forth and ask a question and be able to see what the app looks like. It's really more based on the vibes of does this look good? And being persistent when you get a bug and continuing to ask it to refine the app. But yeah, it's just more of looking at other examples and trying to replicate that.
And is VO specifically for data visualization app? Yeah, data viz, or is that a general AI coding tool?
Yeah, so the question is again, is VO for data viz or general? It's more general. So you can do a whole site. You can do anything you can do in JavaScript. You can use VO to build that in JavaScript. Oh, another nice thing, it actually connects to Figma. So if you build a prototype if you build the mockup in Figma, you can load it in VO and then ask VO to build the thing in JavaScript from Figma. So it's very cool. Yeah.
I hate to cut it off, but I want to make sure at least our other two have plenty of time and perhaps we have others. But yes, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, now the technical part. Let's see if we can stop sharing and then start sharing. And did I kill it completely? Let's see. All right, and which, Michael, you can come ahead. Michael, there we go. Not, okay, let's see.
We'll send out slides.
Yes, we will send out slides to those that were here in some way.
For reasons.
This is not,
I think the meetup.
okay.
Did
Let's
you just encapsulate it in JSON or did you have something more?
share.
He was in CSV. Okay, just and then you have 0 import it in
Yes.
code. Okay, so then it has.
Oh, I see. So it's not behaving.
No, I think it's a separate.
This is,
I see it on Zoom.
oh, okay, so,
Or I did.
and you did, okay, and that's better, but we want to see it here as well. Shared. And let's do that.
Works.
Better,
Yep,
okay,
thanks.
all right, thank you. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, well, hello. My name is Michael Pedersen. This is just a side project I've been working on for way too long. And I'm a full stack software developer that does data analysis on the side. Yep. So this is actually a fun project because it actually saved my friend a parking ticket once. So we didn't know so we had parked at North Carolina Beach, and they have egregious parking like everywhere else. And we didn't know how long we had actually parked at this location or at this parking spot next to the beach was. So, but I remembered him telling a joke, and I could look up what he said and when he said it, and look up how much time has passed since then. So that's how we avoided that parking ticket. But what Loom is just a overly complicated personal analytics tool that tries to do too much. I am being honest. That's why there's a version 2, but I'll get to that. So effectively I guess next slide works. So basically, this is V2, but effectively it amounts to just a unified timeline of personal analytics. Effectively, like everyone's phone has way too much data about themselves on it. Some people even say that their phone knows more about themselves, about them than they know about themselves. So that's kind of that, and kind of a frustration along about all the different like knowledge-based type applications. So let me take a step back. So I've tried to like consolidate like notes that I've taken into like a lot of different apps like Notion or Obsidian, or there's a bunch of others like even Evernote, if you could consider that a knowledge base. But a lot of them kind of just fail because, at least for me, because there's a lack of context. You don't know where you were when you wrote the note. You don't know what you were talking about before you wrote the note. And all of the times when I'm taking notes or doing research on the laptop, it's hard to, sometimes I want to know the process at which I arrived at that, and then sometimes I just completely forget. So this is kind of my attempt to try to basically have like a second memory almost. And there's been a couple of different app methods that have tried to do this in the past, but they're too simple and not complex enough. So this is basically just, it's effectively just a timeline with all sensor data from off your phone and off your laptop, including like screenshots, and sometimes if you enable it, like speech. So it's actually trying to run way too many machine learning models in the background. So V1 of this, which is actually where that parking ticket came from, is that it actually ran like 5 different Docker containers on the back end doing like OCR and speech to text on as fast as possible on my desktop, and it was way too bad. So it was kind of to the point where I could like, it's kind of just passive logging of myself, which is terrible because you get too much data and then you don't know what to do with it. But that's where the data analytics come from. So the idea behind it is basically just taking as much data and then analyzing it after the fact. So like audio classification, for instance, that's used in a lot of like, that can be used in a lot of like health applications actually. So this is almost like a system for like, I've used it to record how many coughs I've had during the day. When I've like the flu's been going around, it's kind of useful to see like, oh, there's a spike here and it's been fading off. Okay, I'm probably good on the NyQuil. But yeah, but it's kind of helpful in that way. And there's a lot of different, it's not just like a memory aid at this point for me. It's kind of just it's a way of trying to organize things that I otherwise wouldn't have the motivation to take notes on. So like, even like, so I use an electric toothbrush, for instance, and I have like a really basic, it's just detecting, it's just a threshold between 2 embeddings to see if it's actually detecting the sound of my toothbrush. But I can log toothbrush noises. So every time my electric toothbrush makes like that distinct buzzing noise, I can log it and it's great. Too much data, but the point of it is to collect it and eventually, ideally, have like some LLM agent figure it out for me after the fact. But I don't know, that's pretty much it. But I'll walk through some of the more nitty-gritty details. So version 1, so one of the largest useful things is actual like logging GPS location. So I kind of just continually log GPS location alongside everything because it's one of the best ways to fit in context. So that was kind of one of the points of the law of like the parking example. It's like I could tell when was the last time I was in like a moving car. Like when's the last time I was traveling 30 miles per hour? And then stopped. And that's how you know you're parked. So it's kind of just like a complete overkill analytic solution that V2 is effectively going back to the edge. V1 was straight up just everything was running on a server, running all the models in Docker containers. It worked, but oh, it also saved everything to timescale because why not? Which is just Postgres. But it was overcomplicating, and I didn't have the time or will to manage it once it got to a certain size. So V2 is now in the works, and it's also open source at that link. But effectively, it's just going to be a mobile app, or not a mobile app, but a desktop app written in something called Tari, which is a Rust framework that basically just lets you make mobile apps and desktop apps using the same code, using the same Rust code base. And when you can do that, you can effectively simplify everything. So all the processing code, all of the like analytics that I'm going to pull out of this can just be one code base that's easy to deploy. And by deploy, I mean run an app on your desktop. And that's what the far left column is. That's the unified view. And these are just, these are just devices you may or may not own. And everything except the watch can be handled by this meta framework. And it's really cool. And that's about it. Yeah.
Jump in, sorry.
Sure.
Who's the audience?
Oh,
Are you the
sorry.
audience?
I'm the audience.
Yeah, that's what I
but
was-
there's also people who are overly concerned with their health, personal analytics buffs, I guess. I guess data nerds, data nerds. Yeah, go ahead.
How are you inviting users?
That's
So inviting you, so it's still in development, obviously, but effectively it's going to just be a Windows or Mac or Linux app that you just download and run. And then you install like the mobile application equivalent or the other desktop equivalent on your laptop. And eventually the current idea is that they just sync whenever they're all in the same Wi-Fi. And that's it, which makes it simple. You don't have to care about servers. And the server, which is like the client that's the one that's considered the master, that's actually going to be storing like the unified view, is pretty much just one that you select. And that's it. So it can just discover these devices over the network through something called MDNS. And that should be good enough. Still looking into alternatives. Cool. Any other questions?
Isn't timescale expensive?
Not if you run it locally, like everything else.
Michael, gotta repeat the question.
Oh.
For Zoom.
Sorry. Is timescale expensive? Is the question. And if you run it locally, no. And you can run, it's not that expensive resource-wise either. It's maybe like less than a gig of RAM. Especially if you're using it for like just a single like user, it's nothing. But it does give you a lot of like time binning things, which are really helpful. But for like single user applications, it's way overkill, and I was just testing it out mostly. Yep.
You say you build it in Rust?
Yep. Work in progress. Yeah, it's written in Rust. Yep.
How much data storage are you looking at for this?
Like
for a year?
Version 1, I had a database table that was 35 gigs of accelerometer data. Only accelerometer data
Period of time?
for like a month. It was terrible, but you could determine like, oh, which way is your phone pointing type stuff, which is kind of helpful.
How about for the audio then?
Hmm?
How about for the audio?
Audio, it was streamed and then processed as fast as possible, more than real time. So I could just store text.
Okay.
And I just had a rolling buffer of audio for the actual audio for like a day. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Oh, sorry. And yeah, and the past question was, how much data did it take to store for audio? Yes.
Have you considered like smart home integrations also?
It would be within the unlimited scope I've determined. So what was the scope? It's unlimited. Yeah, because eventually unfortunately, smartwatches are evil. And the only way to really access the data is to make a custom like Android or iOS like app specifically for it. There's no like meta frameworks really for it. And so you kind of need to connect to them through a native app. But if you just want like heart rate data, you could go through like a Bluetooth adapter, or like just you can set your like Android OS watch to broadcast heart rate over Bluetooth continuously. So you could tie that in somewhere. I don't know. Pull requests are open. Yeah.
I kind of have the same question I'm talking too much for all three of you or whoever comes in.
Yeah.
Kind of, what did you learn? You know, that's
Uh,
kind of, I mean, was this for learning or was
Yeah.
it for play or combination? Yeah.
Let's
that-
thankful, that's good.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
So was this for learning or some other purpose? Yes, learning. And mostly just to see what it would take to actually, because just to see like the main challenge ended up being like just the data APIs, because I want to be able to stream as much as possible and store stuff offline on the device before it can sync. And just all the random device APIs that are always changing are evil and terrible. And like, I'm a firm believer of if you own a cell phone, you should be able to take continuous screenshots of your screen because it's your screen and you own it. But unfortunately, that's somewhat annoying on like iOS and Android. So I don't know, there's a lot of limitations that I've encountered, but it was mostly just for learning. And even version 2 is with Rust is just for learning. Yep.
One question, kind of tied to the audio thing, because I mean, that's usually space intensive, but also
Yeah.
power intensive. You run the battery
Yeah.
down significantly.
Yeah.
Doing nonstop.
Yeah, it's pretty, yeah, that's, yeah. I started carrying around a battery pack. It was very annoying. Yeah, fortunately, so how much battery did it take? And a lot was the response. So yeah, that was kind of the reason why V1 just, I stopped
That's the
using
limiting
it.
Factor right now.
Yeah, like I kind of stopped using it for a while, mostly because of that purpose. And while kind of thinking through like what actually needs to be done for V2, actually setting like sync frequencies and like duty cycles effectively for every single sensor type, because accelerometer data, even though it's small, can get large quick. And just setting those limits from the get-go are what I'm trying to do. And trying to push as much, like with the shared code base with Rust, trying to push as much of the logic and like the inference to the edge devices as possible. So even on iOS and Android, there's now speech to text on your phone. You don't need to run like an offsite model for it for a lot of the cases. So you can just do speech to text on the phone. And only when you detect like speech, you can just run, even if the speech to text is too intensive for running continuously on the phone, you can still record the audio, pass it through voice detection algorithms like that, and only store the voice segments. And that cuts down a lot. So you don't have to deal with just white noise audio, which takes a lot of space, but is worthless. Yep. Okay.
Great.
Cool. Oh, so go ahead.
Just in your future, as you meet CEOs and heads of HR, will you promise to never show them this?
I'll stick with this slide. Um, yeah. Oh yeah, no, this it's overly simplified gobbledygook. It's even that is worthless. But whatever, it works. But yeah, I get your point.
Unless you're CEO, then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
What was your profit in high school?
Do you want?
What was your profit in high school?
Oh, I think it was like 40 or 50.
In an hour a day?
It was in like a day, but also well medicated. So not a fair comparison. I don't know.
Well, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
William, you can probably do this as well as I can, as the switching, but I'll give it a first shot. We'll try to stop the share. That worked better this time. Let's see. And yours is that one.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, that was, and yes?
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Also
Thanks.
question on Zoom, to support other file formats, like store video, PDF in the system. So, no.
Awesome. Hey, everybody, I'm Will. So quick agenda, I'll do an introduction myself. I'll tell you a brief history on Pokemon so that if you don't know already, then you'll be up to speed. I'll tell you, so the intro is just to set up the problem statement, and then I will tell you sort of a wireframe of what I'm building over the last few weeks. So myself, I currently am doing freelance analytics here in Nashville. A lot of data engineering work more than data science, but also some finance work. Before that, I was at Meta. I did video calling stuff for a little while, and then creator monetization for a little while. Before that, I was an actuary, so that's where the finance stuff comes in. And before that, I was a chemist. So similar to what Leon said earlier, like I bounce around a lot. That's how it is. You can find me on LinkedIn here. I'll put the 2 QR codes up later, and a Pokemon Home if you want to send me any great Pokemon later. So some background. Pokemon's an RPG, it's a role-playing game. You travel around as a little person and you catch little creatures. Big part of it is to organize or categorize them. You're gonna build teams and compete against each other. They all have specific skills. It's like rock, paper, scissors. So this is good at that, that one's good at this, and you try to outplay each other. You also trade with other people so you can collect everything. There's 39 mainline games, I think, at this point. It's been going on for over 30 years. It's a huge thing. So I think somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 billion is what they've made so far. It's the largest, highest grossing media franchise ever. So big business. Oh, and key point, there's a new game coming out this year. So that's what sets up the future questions here. So the original games, the first one I played had about 150 Pokemon. Now there's over 1,000. Each game, each time they release a set of games, there's usually maybe a pair, and you can't get everything in just one. So it'll encourage you to trade with your friends. That way you can catch everything. Or you can buy 2. If you want to give them twice the money, that's another option. They also usually include 1 or 2 that you can't get without going to Toys R Us or something like that and bringing your little cable or finding other people to trade with you. So yeah, so that will come back to haunt me later. But so here's a problem statement, I guess, for you is there's now over 1,000 Pokemon, there's 40 games, and what do I do if I want to catch them? What's the fewest number of games I can go through? So I could just play all 40 games. I don't want to do that. That's a lot of time. What's the best order, the optimal path? That's going to be a problem. I have a Switch, I have a 3DS. I don't have all of the other systems. Do I need to buy other video game systems? So that's, and then how's this going to change in 3 months when the next game comes out? So split that up, and this is sort of when asked, kind of break it into terms of what we're actually doing in a data project way. So you got to collect the data, join it, put it all together, then make the combinations, but the permutation aspect. So you need to know what order to play them in if you want to do this efficiently. That's going to be a pain for me over the next few weeks. The joins and the lookup table. So if I aggregate by system, I can say, oh, all this stuff is great on a Switch, but I need to go buy a 3DS and jailbreak it. So it'll tell me how much effort I'm getting into. And the real challenge I'm looking for out of this one is I want to make it repeatable. So I can get all of this done and then it changes in 3 months. So I want to build this in a way that I can just click play again when the next game comes out and it'll revise the answer for me. So, and the key thing I also want out of it is I've never used Superset. So it's an Apache visualization tool. It's free and open source. And a cool thing about it is like you can put it in GitHub and it's all text-based and it'll monitor your versions over time. Unlike say like Tableau or Power BI, which I use more of, it's not as easy to just see what changed from one to the next. You have to open them both up and it's not as easy. So here's the wireframe. Here's what I've got. So there's a RESTful API for Pokemon if you want to play with an API for some reason. It's awesome. It only has maybe the first 800 Pokemon worth of data. So the next thing I had to build some web scrapers. After the first one, I noticed it didn't match the API. So I built a third source. Now I have 4 sources of data and they don't match. So it's exactly like a real world problem at work. The nuclear option that I'm working through right now is there's a open source program that lets you see inside of the ROMs of every one of the games. So we can see what the developers made for the last 30 years and then know exactly where every Pokemon could be. That's my nightmare right now. Put it all together into a database. I'm using DuckDB, but I also have Postgres set up at home. Like I said, I'm going to try to visualize it in Superset, and then I need to figure out how to Dockerize it and set it up so that it's monitoring for new versions of PKHex, so that when their GitHub project updates, I automatically rerun. So there we go. So that's the current state. I built the web scrapers. I've got the data model mostly set up. I have not made any pretty reports, and I definitely haven't automated anything. So I have nothing to show you as far as an actual visualization. So I'll open it up to questions. I dumped a lot of information at once there. Go ahead.
So with Pulpopedia, I actually tried web scraping that myself, but I found that when it scrolls down, that's whenever it loads the data. So like my instructor was like, oh, you'd have to do like an advanced version of web scraping to get this done. Can you just kind of talk about how you made it work a little bit?
Yes. So the question was with some of the websites, they don't necessarily load the information at once. You have to actively go into it, scroll down, and that's where the information comes. So I'm using Python right now with, I think Selenium is the program I'm using to scrape. And there's a couple different ways that you can do it, but I'm essentially opening a Chrome instance and having it load anything that it needs to do. So it's pretending to be me. Yeah. Anybody else?
You're virtually doing this.
Yeah, kinda. Kinda.
So it sounds like you're using SQL for basically to get the optimization. It sounds like it might be a graph optimization.
I don't even know how I'm going to, so I'll give you
Okay.
I'll give you the exact solution that I came up with. You need to play this particular game first so that you have saved data. You need to play Let's Go Pikachu or Let's Go Eevee first before you play, I think it's Brilliant Diamond. Because if you have saved data, then you can get a Mew. And it's like that order thing is going to be tricky because I don't know how they're going to change it in the new game. There could be any sort of problems there. Yeah.
What the constraints are to the problem. I think it sounds like a graph optimization may be a more efficient way than trying to get it.
Sure. The question is for the ordering, it sounds like a graph optimization problem, and maybe SQL isn't a great tool for that, I think is and I would say I'm struggling with that right now. I'm looking at using Jinja basically to go through the offer, like cycle through, do this one, then that one, then that one, now do that one, that one, that one. And if I'm limiting just to Switch games, it's maybe 6. So it's not that computationally heavy.
If you're trying to use Jinja to avoid, like to add the recursion, Which did you use? Because I don't remember. Anyway, never mind.
Yeah. The question is why Jinja for recursion is, I think the leading there is as opposed to a real programming language. And that's a great question because I'm using Python to call the Jinja SQL. So there's no reason not to do it in Python at all. Yeah.
You might get recursion in the raw SQL that you can't get in by, well, I guess if you're using Python to drive recursion, yeah, it's more powerful.
It's all a mess is where I'm currently at. So yeah. What else? Anybody? Is there anything on the Zoom call also?
That no one wants to play a GameCube game, beat it up. You don't have your trainers that working with the folks in fun to get Cube to GBA, to DS, to 3DS, to both.
That is exactly true. It is, that's what I was facing. So, yes.
You mentioned that you will extract data from several sources to fill in the gaps.
Yes.
So will you be using a fair amount of imputation to fill in the gaps that you will have, and will it stand by that? And the second part of that question is, do you have a layout of the data set that you think is optimal that you're going to try to make?
Cool. Okay, so two-part question. The first one is, how am I handling having these data sources that don't match? How am I deciding on what the truth is, and how am I like kind of imputing the real answer? And the second question, second part of it was, what's, I guess, how do I decide what the optimal data model should look like, or the optimal columns here? Trial and error, I think, is the answer to both of those so far. So I have sort of, what are all the artifacts I'm looking for of like, my approach to it was, is there a place where I can encounter the Pokemon or trade for it within a game? And then from there, it's like, okay, that's going to happen multiple times. So I need something to distinguish encounter method and location and Pokemon. So it's just sort of bridging out. I have basically the same Google Doc I would write in a work scenario of kind of exploring what it should be. And then once I have every possible question I could ask myself, that's when I'll finally build. And then, the next day I have to add the new thing I discovered. So iterative for sure. As far as how to actually decide what the solution is here, the order I wrote them in is every time I find one that's wrong, I go to the next step. So my first thought was, cool, there's an API, I don't have to do anything checking. The second one was, I guess I know this one website. And then the next one was, oh, that website's missing something that's over here. So it's guess and check. It's kind of how I'm playing it right now. Yep.
Yeah. Could you analyze like save data instead of the ROMs themselves? That might be more consistent.
I could. That would tell me. So the question was, could I analyze save data instead of the ROM data? Yes, but you would need a save that has every Pokemon that's possible to have in the game. So the ROM tells you the exhaustive collection of possibilities, whereas the save tells you what was done. And so if someone doesn't catch every Pokemon available in the game, I wouldn't know for sure. So if I analyzed enough of the save files, I could feel pretty good that somebody had caught them all. It's an option. So yeah.
Will you use emulators to do some of these?
So the question is, will I be using emulators or not for this? So that is an option. You can use emulators. There's, you would always, of course, do that legally and, pay for it. So the Pokemon community is really sensitive about what counts as real or cheating. So for example, there are some Pokemon you just can't get. So the option is you can just create it. It's fine. It's just data. You can make that. Well, is that cheating or not? People are very picky about this type of thing. There's another aspect to this, which is tracking is going to happen probably in a centralized app owned by the Nintendo and Pokemon companies. Will they be able to detect that you cheated? If they do, they'll ban your account. Is it worth taking that risk? And then some of it is like, you know that you can get away with getting a Jirachi or whatever, but like, what's the point of it to get the Jirachi by any means necessary? Because if that's the case, just write a script that generates all 1,000 of them. So it's a gray area. I might need to end up emulating some of the older games to do this. So we'll see after the new game. Yeah.
Zoom question, does the new glitch count as cheating?
Does the new glitch count as cheating? For this instance, one of the Switch games, lets you get Mew if you have Let's Go Pikachu or Let's Go Eevee data. So I'm not even going to approach the Mew glitch. I'm just going to get it from that person in the city. I'm going to trade for it.
Nice.
What else?
Thank you.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, I have an unofficial question. Does missing number count? It does not. Not currently.
Are we good, Sam? As far as will we stop sharing? Yes. So before we, are there others in the room that have a project idea to share? Or, you know, it doesn't have to be a finished and possibly not a 10-minute or anything, but you have a couple of minutes you'd like to just say, this is what I'm working on now. Yeah, you're as brave as you were at the beginning. And that's fine. I'm not going to push too hard. Any ideas to share? Yes. You want to? Yes.
I mean, I don't have a presentation.
No, that's fine. That's not what I'm asking you for.
Something I'm working on, I guess. This is, I worked on it. Oh, I'm Himi. I work in music. I'm a analytics engineer at BMG. So I spend a lot of time looking at royalty data and streaming data, but this project has nothing to do with that. I'm also a politics junkie. I love politics. I love learning about it. And I love consuming it in a bipartisan way.
And for the Zoom folks, at least let them see your face for at least a moment.
Hi. Sorry, I'm like camera shy, so. But okay, so during my master's, what I did was I scraped a bunch of websites, a bunch of news websites from ABC, Fox News, whichever allowed me and didn't block me. I used Selenium. I kind of did what you were talking about, had to scroll it, using Selenium to get all this data. The goal being, I wanted to create a newsletter that would give you the highlights, but also provide you news with both sides and not just one side, at least in the United States. This project was in 2020, so that felt very apt at that point. I'm going to be picking this back up, mainly because I'm a consumer of Morning Brew, great newsletter. I love it. I do their investments, marketing, all of their newsletters. But something I do see or feel missing is that other side of the aisle, like argument. I want to eventually create that newsletter, but the first step is getting all of this data and storing it, obviously. Part of it is you'll get a quick snapshot of across the aisle, what are the news items, what are people talking about? And then the goal is you can choose what you want to read. It's not what you're being served, but you are at least getting an overview of both sides of the aisle. It will also have like quick analysis of, poll data from like about our like president, vice president, speaker of the house. If you're from a specific city, for example, I'm from New York, so the governor was really important to me at that time. Now I don't care, but he is still on the ballot, but that's a different conversation. So stuff like that, quick analysis of your current political climate, but you having the ability to choose what you want to read, as opposed to you getting served ads based on your personal data, and you being served what you're subscribed to. Because what happens often, and I'm a great case of that, living in New York, I was served a specific set of ads, a specific set of data, and like I said, subscribe to Morning Brew, so I do get the other side of the aisle. The goal is to eventually make the newsletter. I do have the framework for the newsletter. We do have the framework for the scraping of the data. It'll be once a day, or maybe I want to start with once a week, and then eventually scale it up. But yeah, it's something that I've worked on for a while. I'm going to be picking this up again. Hopefully in the next one of these, I'll have like steps for people to like help and assist with. But yeah.
Questions?
Can you just repeat your name?
Oh, hi, my name's Himi, Himi. Cool.
And you're with BMG?
Yes, so I am a director of analytics engineering at BMG. I spend a lot of time modeling data. Music, recently realized how much data there is. Never cleaned it up, but we're getting there. So that's kind of what I do.
So when you think of the partisan slant, are you thinking of like so you get an article and you want to know what like the opposite of that article is, or is it that the actual topic list itself may be different depending on the partisans or both?
And the question again, if you could.
Yes. So the question is, when I'm thinking by partitions nature, am I saying is it about the same topic or is it a different topic from the other side of the aisle, essentially? In an ideal world, it would be kind of both. My main goal being that because specific news outlets push a specific agenda. Also, just a little bit more background. I did work in this world, so that's where I come from. So that's why I'm kind of understanding of like what specific differences are, I guess. So specific side will be pushing a specific narrative, but they also have different priorities. So while say one might be prioritizing Department of Education, but the other might be caring more about the tariffs, you know? So I want to be able to get both sides of the aisle for these two topics while they're separate and different, but I want to be knowing what the other side is saying. It's kind of my goal. So, yes.
So this sounds a lot like there's a website ground.news that goes and gathers news from a variety of sources. I think what the leanings of a specific article are, but kind of how many articles being published by different sources, depending on what they are on the spectrum. So when you're familiar with that, and then two, kind of where you distinguishing yourself in a product like that.
Okay, the question is about if I'm aware of this website called Ground News. Ground.news and how I would distinguish myself from them. Did not know about that. So that would be the first answer. The second question is, that's a website and that would still require, does it have links to the actual articles that it's kind of serving? Okay, so my distinction would be because there's firewalls and obviously like paywalls that block these kind of stuff. My hope, and hopefully legally one day I'll get to do this, is scrape that information and provide that summarized version with obviously citing the source that this is where it's coming from. Is the ideal goal so that the end user does not have to pay or get blocked by, say, a Washington Post paywall.
I'll comment that as like a recovering news junkie, the idea of a newsletter in my inbox that's a constrained, finite list of things.
Yeah.
An infinitely scrollable thing.
Yeah.
Feels much healthier.
Yes. The comment was about like newsletter being a finite source versus an infinite source of being able to scroll. The reason I wanted to create this newsletter was because I don't have infinite time. So for me, it was like, I do consume news. I block out, I'm a big time blocker. So I block out 10 minutes to 30 minutes every morning to read the news and consume the news. I want to be able to make a proper decision, not really decision, but what I'm choosing to retain. I want to be able to do that within that finite source, almost like, or time, I guess. In an ideal world, all I would be doing is reading news all day, but that's not the ideal world.
I'm not sure that's an ideal world.
Hey, I'm a politics junkie, so, but yeah.
On Zoom, any questions?
No, I think we do have Sean Garrison is willing to present.
Sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, okay.
Cool.
Thanks so
Thank you all.
much. Okay.
Sean, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Let's see here. So I've been working on a project. It's not really data engineering related, but I've been working on a project where I do a weekly stream. So if anyone doesn't know anything about streaming, it's like where you get on Twitch or YouTube and you stream like video games, or you stream topics to talk about and stuff. And I've been putting together like a slide deck to share kind of like what the schedule would look like. I can share my screen if that's okay and show like what that looks like. I cannot. Okay, I won't do that.
It's not allowed.
I have to do that. Forgive me.
Let's see. Oh, see if that'll work. Sean?
All right, let me. Should I pull up the right thing? Okay. Wow. Sorry, I have too many windows open. Windows parser. Yes. Okay. It's just easier to share the VS Code. So I'm not going to bog everyone down with the code, but basically, every week I would be creating this slide deck to then post to social media. And it got really tedious because the way I had it set up, every time I would like move these boxes or like try to edit the boxes, sometimes the text wouldn't fit right. And so I wanted to automate this. So I spent like a weekend and cranked and got this out, and it now generates the image. And I'm now working on being able to post to social media using code. So instead of me writing the text and then posting it on social media, I'm hoping to just like have an automated one and done system. So it will save me, instead of like 45 to an hour trying to make this, it's like I just spend updating a text file and then updating another text file, and I'm not like dealing with saving PowerPoints and saving it as image and then bundling it to bundle it with a text. So I'm looking forward to finishing that. The other thing that I wanted to share is I run a Python meetup group called PyWonder. And so it's been really great to see all of these projects. And one of the things we offer at PyWonder is talking about projects on a weekly basis. So if anyone's interested in that, the yeah, Python meetup group, we would love for y'all to show up there, and happy to keep you guys engaged, or keep y'all engaged with your projects. I know like with the new year kind of rolling around, people had like New Year's goals and things in mind, and it's usually about a month or two in, you start to like get a little weakened on your goals. And so one way to like help combat that is community. So having a sense of like a group and a belonging, a community can really help keep you engaged with your goals and help you realign with that throughout the year. So feel free to stop by there if you'd like. That's all I really had. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.